War against the machines.
So I actually ended up watching Terminator Zero over the weekend, and I gotta say, it left quite an impression on me. That's honestly the best way to describe my feelings towards this show. So I do want to talk about it. So big spoilers up ahead. So yeah, I'm gonna be honest. Growing up, Terminator was one of those series I would constantly rewatch, especially Terminator 2. Oh my gosh, Judgment Day is by far one of my favorite, and I mean favorite sci-fi movies of all time. Sure, the Predator movies are cool. Sure, the Alien movies are cool. But Terminator, man, that and Revenge of the Sith growing up were by far some of my favorite films. I don't know if you guys remember Blockbuster or not, but I would always go tell my dad, hey, can we rent this film out again? Like, I would pretty much watch it religiously over every other weekend, like Revenge of the Sith or like Terminator. I really enjoyed those series. They were by far some of my favorite things. Aside from Batman, I just really like this series. Anytime they release a Terminator film, I always end up watching it, even if it's bad. I know the last few movies haven't been that great, especially Dark Fate, which is garbage, like other garbage. But with the release of Terminator Zero, it adds something new to the franchise. It feels something refreshing that this series actually needs, like it desperately needs, and I think it did it in a compelling and an interesting way. So I really do like how this series is pretty much set in Japan. It's something different because most Terminator films, like literally all of them, are pretty much set in America because that's where Skynet was created. Judgment Day, August 28th, was it 28th or 29th? And 1997, End of the World happens, California, blah blah blah. Pretty much the Terminator franchise is solely set in California and most of the North American continent. We never really get to see or explore how the rest of the world was affected by Judgment Day, what happened with this character, yada yada. But in this timeline or series, it's pretty much set in Japan. The interesting thing that they went with this is, like, there's a Japanese company, I think it was Cervix or Cortex. They created their own AI system named Kokoro, and Kokoro is pretty much the counter to Skynet. And we got our scientist guy, Malcolm. There's a big twist with him, which I'm just gonna say right now, spoilers, and he's pretty much from the future. He time traveled from like 2050 all the way to 1983 in order to prevent Skynet. Because if you know how time travel works and the Terminator franchise, it's not linear, because most premises about time travel tend to say if you go back in time you can change the future. However, Terminator does the Dragon Ball lore type of time travel, where if you go back in time, it essentially creates a different reality. It essentially doesn't really change the future, it just creates a different timeline. So no matter how many times you go back, it's not really going to affect the future. It's just going to keep creating different realities. And it's even stated in the show when Malcolm is explaining it to Kokoro that time travel is essentially meaningless. It doesn't really do a whole lot. Yeah, I can go back in time, but I'm not going to save the future I'm from. It's just going to erase it. It's pretty much just going to be there, but like I can never really change it. Essentially, the timeline I'm going to try to save this timeline and save what I've built for myself. Because ever since Malcolm came from the future, he built himself a family. He found a wife, he got kids, and now with Judgment Day happening, with him pretty much predicting everything, he's afraid. And what the cool thing about this show is, it goes beyond the events of Judgment Day, because most of the films are literally set before Judgment Day, or it's majority of the Terminator films are set before Judgment Day, which is kind of annoying. I've always really wanted to see the Future War animated or yes, a film solely focused on it. Terminator Salvation doesn't really count. I mean, I like that film. I know a lot of people hate it, but I enjoyed it. But yeah, in this show we actually get to see glimpses of the Future War and how there's multiple timelines, how Malcolm and his mother, pretty much a soldier, are from two separate timelines, and they go back to this specific one in order to prevent Malcolm from turning on the Kokoro AI. And the Terminator that was actually hunting down Malcolm or trying to reprogram it is actually this Terminator made by his son, one that he reprogrammed himself, who told him, hey, you told me in the far distant future we need to destroy Kokoro because in the future Skynet and humanity form a temporary alliance to defeat Kokoro, which is pretty interesting because we never really get to see rival AI in the Terminator timeline. It's always like Skynet this, Skynet that, but we never have to have a mutual enemy, which I found pretty interesting with the introduction of Kokoro, this rival AI system that was solely created to protect humanity, to be a weapon against Skynet, but at the same time she ultimately turns against humanity in this weird sort of way. Not to mention Misaki, she's also an android from the future that Malcolm created to be a better version of Skynet, to essentially be a human version of Skynet. But she ends up going back in time with Malcolm, ultimately ended up creating Kokoro, but Kokoro is not the promised AI as Misaki was. Misaki is essentially this ideal version of what AI and humanity could be if they truly bonded with one another. The whole show itself is pretty much trippy. It's very philosophical. It's very deep. I know a lot of people are complaining about the show because there wasn't really a whole lot of action, but there was a good amount of action, a good amount of horror, and a lot of other stuff. It was pretty compelling how some of the characters acted, especially as kids. I'm not gonna lie, I actually ended up crying towards the final episode in certain moments of the show because, I don't know, something about the show like really impacted me. And the thing I like about the show is that it's, like I said, it's very psychological, very emotional. Like, it's very in-depth messages. Whenever AI or whenever they would use 3D animation, it would convey those weird robotic movements, and they got very like deep into discussion, into philosophy, into the life, what it truly means to be human, what it truly means to be machine. And I know some people don't like heavy dialogue type of shows because, I mean, you gotta admit, Terminator is a sci-fi show, and most sci-fi shows, they ultimately have like this long compelling dialogue. To me, I found that pretty interesting. I really like the world building in this show, how it goes deeper into the Terminator lore. It tried to do what Terminator Genesis did, but better, like incorporate different timelines into this one and then create its own thing. It also referenced the events of the first two Terminator films, saying, oh yeah, these things happen. It doesn't matter how many times Skynet sends someone to kill said human, it's always gonna repeat because this is ultimately a never-ending cycle. It's pretty much a time loop. Even the soldier from the future, who turns out to be Malcolm's mother, is like, wait a minute, I need answers. Is this a time loop? How am I your mother? What happens in the future? Is this how humanity ultimately ends? Which honestly, I found really interesting. The fact that they ended it off in a time loop, but not really, was really, really interesting in my honest opinion. And I do gotta say, Terminator Zero is one of those series, if you don't want to give something like new, something refreshing a chance, then you're not really gonna like this. If you go into the series thinking it's gonna be just like the Terminator films, I think you might be disappointed. But it honestly reminds me a lot of Steins Gate, because Steins Gate is one of those series that's like really philosophical and like goes deep into the meaning of life, the meaning of time travel. I think this is a perfect example of like how time travel works, but at the same time it doesn't work, because we obviously don't know if time travel works or not, because it's not real. Could be, could not be, but I just really like the elements the Terminator Zero explored with humanity, with machine, with AI, especially in our current day and age where AI is on the verge of becoming something greater. This honestly terrified me, and like told myself, yeah, I'm 100% terrified of AI, what they could potentially do in the future. I'm not one of those people who's ultimately against AI. I do want AI to like have some type of regulation, but you know, with governments and corporations, they're not gonna do that. They're pretty much greedy, and like this show really explored what it means to be human and the moments between, what the borderlines between man and machine, which was really, really interesting. Even Kokoro states, what is humanity good for? Name me one thing humanity is good for without themselves killing each other for one single moment. From the moment they've been on the planet, they've turned everything that is good into a weapon. And I really like the arguments between Malcolm and Kokoro, how they discuss Skynet, how they discuss the turn of humanity. Also seeing the events of Japan ultimately be spared from the events of Judgment Day, but then they succumb to their own AI revolution, was honestly terrifying. Also, the cop scene with the Terminator was a pretty cool nod to the original film. That terrified me. The fact that they emphasized the Terminator to be this sort of unstoppable killing machine, like you could tell from the first episode, they like showed us, yeah, these Terminators, they're like a one-man army. They can take down entire platoons, entire squads of trained militia, trained military. Hell, even the one that was like destroying the police station was able to wipe out every single cop with ease, man. Can you imagine just being like that cop and you're trying to fight this machine, man? It would be absolutely terrifying. If you don't like sci-fi storytelling or deep type of shows, this show might not be for you, but I honestly enjoy it, like I said, because it talks about AI, it talks about machines. It really relates to humanity. In fact, this show is probably more important than ever in today's age, especially with the growing rampant of technology. I really did enjoy it, and I gotta say my honest thoughts about the Terminator Zero, it's gotta be a 9 out of 10. Like I said, I really loved it. I really enjoyed it. It's a series I grew up watching when I was a kid, so I might be biased about talking about that, but overall it's very emotional, very impactful, and I do hope it gets a second season because I want more. I want to learn more about the world of Terminator Zero, how it ultimately connects with the American side of Skynet, how like these two characters interact. Maybe we could see John Connor pop up in the future, or like a nod, or like another Easter egg, but it would be really cool. That's just my thoughts on Terminator Zero. I know I didn't really talk about too much about the show, but I want you guys to actually experience and watch it. But overall, pretty good show. Damn good show. Anyone that says otherwise, you're lame. You did not understand this story, and you guys just want action. But I love these type of shows. They go deep into the human element. Very nice. Also, Production IG, it has been killing it with Kaiju number 8. And then they make this. Same people that make Kaiju number 8 made this. So pretty awesome, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Feel free to check out my other videos, and be sure to support my other channel. Got more stuff coming out. Also be doing a Warhammer video on my other channel sometime soon, so yeah, keep an eye out for that, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.